This video is on conspiracy, uncertainty, and chaos. So it's really about order or the lack thereof. We're in 2022 and the country is kind of disordered. It's losing its mind. Disordered. We'll say disordered. The internet and social media kind of hit us at the same time that people are losing faith in the institutions. So it's kind of a perfect social storm. And we just get to be caught in the middle of it. That's nice. That's just great. This video should really come with a trigger warning. It is for people who can go to dark places and not stay there. Now, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the collective consciousness is a little schizophrenic right now. It's deeply unwell. If we were to make a graphic of the collective consciousness, it would look like a swirling storm, like smoke, like turbulence, like chaos itself. The person who best embodies the collective consciousness right now is having a meth freak out on the corner. I live in Los Angeles, so that's relevant to me. Now, plenty of us are still sane, so that's good. But we have to ask ourselves how often it's happened that a sane population, if the majority is sane, how often has that majority sane population stopped the crazies from taking power? It didn't happen in the Russian Revolution of 1917. It did not happen in Germany in the 1930s. It didn't happen in the French Revolution. It is my sincere belief that it will happen now. But I don't take it as a given. I'm just saying that to make you feel better. No, I really believe it. I really believe it. I'm kidding. I'm not just saying that to make you feel better. I actually believe it. But we can't really count on that. We can't take it as a given. A tiny fraction of nut jobs can take down a nation just like a small bacteria can take down a horse. It can just happen. And yes, there's a solution. We'll get to that. We'll get to the solution. There is a solution. But first, we have to kind of address the problem because you have to state the problem clearly to get to the solution. It's just how this works. The problem, as I see it, is that madness is running rampant. It's running rampant online. It's running rampant through people's minds. I kind of hoped that after COVID and after the election, it would die down. But the 20 years leading up to COVID should have told me that that wasn't going to happen. It should have warned me. Check out that video, Millennial Life of Chaos. Our life of chaos is not over. We're still young. There's so much more time for more chaos. More things can happen to us, just one thing after another, until sweet death takes us at the ripe old age of 110. We're just wisps of people kept alive by this expensive pharmaceutical stuff, all these interventions just on an IV in a bed in some nursing home somewhere, and every penny we'd ever saved is being siphoned off to pay for this so we can live just one more day. Anyone else see that happen to their grandparents? Did anyone else see that happen to their grandparents? Okay, just me? Okay, well, that's depressing. That's why the trigger warning is here. That's why I said about the trigger warning. It doesn't make us bad people. It just makes us people who happen to have been born at a not so great time, at a shifting time, a time of changing technology, a time when our institutions are crumbling, and a time of unprecedented wealth. You know, more money, more problems. Am I right?
A crown for a king.
Now, the world may not be more terrifying than any time in the past, but right now, we know about it. We're looking at it. It's on our phone. Kind of takes away the illusion of certainty, the illusion of security. It's gone because we can see it all. Now, for the layman, for just regular people out there, uncertainty happens when there are too many variables to keep track of. Like, I know how my day is going to go if I just stay home and I'm not online, no computer, nothing. I'm just in a room by myself. I'm pretty certain how my day is going to go. Now, add family, add pets, add work, add me going out, and now my day is uncertain. I don't know how it will go. So there is uncertainty. Uncertainty doesn't really sound too scary. Let's all have uncertainty. No, girl. Uncertainty is a nice way of saying chaos. Chaos is the enemy of order and has been going back till the beginning. The ancient Egyptians knew about chaos. Ra, the sun god, emerged from the water of chaos, and he had to fight it every night. Chaos is Mayat's nemesis. Now, go to that video on cosmic order. It's a very deep concept, and it's more than the scope of this video. Just know that Ma'at represented order, and she was represented by the scales. So even measuring the natural world contributes to order and fights chaos. Interesting. Order versus chaos. Chaos versus order. It is the backdrop against which we all live. Also remember that chaos takes over as soon as we stop making efforts towards order. Now, modern people, we now know this as entropy, but spiritualists remember that Ra had to fight Apophis every single night. Apophis was chaos. Remember that awful movie, Gods of Egypt? Okay, it's whatever. What is this Apophis that Ra fought? Well, it's earthquakes, it's fire, it's the trajectory of asteroids or stray bullets, it's the fury of a mob. All of those things reflect a kind of natural order. There is order to chaos. But if those things happen to you, your life becomes chaotic. So it's kind of like the butterfly effect. The butterfly effect is an example of chaos. If a butterfly flaps its wings, that can lead to a major storm at the other side of the world. Please reference the movie The Butterfly Effect, as well as a much worse version of that movie. It is called A Sound of Thunder, and it stars Ben Kingsley. There's dinosaurs. These two movies are an example of the butterfly effect because look, it's the same basic premise, the butterfly effect. But after so many variables that go into making a film, you've got the script, you've got the director, acting, so forth and so on. One of these movies is absolutely beautiful, and the other, The Sound of Thunder, is the worst movie I've ever seen. It's so bad, I've seen it 3 times. I might watch it again later. It is so bad, it's good. Anyway, well, right now the collective consciousness approaches chaos. If our collective consciousness is a black iron prison, we have let chaos infest many of its wings. Whole wings are infested with chaos now, like termites just eating away at the wood. Now, here at Maya Muses, we stand chaos. The dance of chaos is absolutely beautiful to watch from a distance. The thought game of chaos is a blast to play at parties with friends. Come on. Unfortunately, chaos in the real world is much more dangerous than a thought game. Also, when you let the general public play the game of chaos, the thought game of chaos, it turns into real world chaos. So, that's great. The game, the thoughts become material reality. And whoopsie daisy, we just sort of let it out. We let it loose online. Oh, that's great. We live in a chaotic world. Chaos is the system that makes everything move, makes everything turn. Let's look at these pictures. Just look at it. Look at how beautiful it is. Isn't she beautiful? So is it good? Is chaos good? Well, heresy is religious chaos. Heresy helps religions expand and evolve. Also, flip side, heresy undermines religions and destroys them from within. Chaos is dangerous, but chaos is also necessary. It's complicated. No, actually, it's complicated. It's really complicated. It's a whole field of mathematics. Chaos being so complex is why we'll never know God's plan. It's why, in my opinion, Laplace's demon is a fiction. Laplace's demon is an idea that if there were this all-knowing entity and they were present at the beginning of the universe when they set everything in motion, that entity would know every bit of information, would be aware of everything going on in the universe. It would be able to predict the future. But that's just a fiction. This is why it doesn't mean that there is no God. Let's say God made creation and he set everything in motion, okay? Perhaps this God is so great that he made something that would confound even him. Think about that episode of Star Trek The Next Generation when Data asked the computer to make a villain that could defeat him. The computer made Moriarty, okay? Why couldn't God make the material world and also make it play by the laws of chaos? And then chaos produces order, and order produces chaos, and it's a great dance. And we don't know, and we can't know it all. Let's just all accept that we can't know it all. I think if we all accepted this, we'd be better off. The more we learn, the more there is to learn. An exercise in not knowing. If you learned everything that man has ever known, you still won't know about other universes in the multiverse. The multiverse is a theory that our universe is just one of many universes, just like our galaxy, the Milky Way, is just one of many galaxies. Here is a map of the known universe. Everything we know about physics only applies to our universe. Physicists aren't even trying to tell us about other universes. They can't. And it's amazing that physicists can tell us anything at all. And then you've got these people who don't even know about the Milky Way asking questions about the multiverse. Like, girl, walk before you can run. Let's do a book report on Alpha Centauri first. Baby steps. But even the most brilliant human can never know all the details of what reality is. Does each universe in the multiverse have its own God? Are there black holes in the multiverse or something as destructive that could just take down whole universes? What numbers and number ratios are significant across universes? This stuff is just unknown. We don't know it. We're not going to know it. So we humans, we make mental maps of the world and we move forward with certainty because we have to in order to survive. But our mental maps aren't real. Our brain fills in gray areas. It ultimately works. This strategy ultimately works because the execution of a mediocre idea is better than no execution of a perfect idea. So it's still a good strategy. Now, we work together to reduce chaos. Society, civilization, our collective efforts are us working together to reduce chaos. To know we can get our physical and emotional needs met. We need these things met. Not just that there's food at the market, but to know that there's going to be food at the market in the future. That's where the mental uncertainty comes in, just allaying our fears of the future. Now, chaos has its own order. Don't get me wrong. It's nature's order. But don't be dumb and buy into these memes and these pleasantries you see online. Nature is beautiful. Nature is beautiful, yes. But she does not give one flip about you. We need to go back to a purer time. I've read memes like this. Like when? When people were getting lynched or burned at the stake? When we were rummaging through the forest for berries? What's this better time? Where is the better time? When is the better time? When we were little creatures getting picked off by coyotes and predators and whatnot? Like little meerkats? When we were little meerkats, is that the better time? Is that the purer time? Like, no, this is a fantasy. This is nostalgia for a time that never even existed. Hippie communes, I love you as a concept, but let's be real. You want global depopulation? This is how. These gardens can't sustain a lot of people. They often can't even sustain the hippie family that planted them. If you need any proof, feel free to go work on one of them. Try to even get 1,200 calories a day per person, let alone clothing and shelter and whatever else you need for a society. It's not feasible. Just know that any quality of life we have whatsoever is because humans got together and worked toward superimposing man's order over nature's order. And that took lifetimes of compounded suffering. You ever see these ants holding onto each other and forming a raft to float because they would drown on their own? That raft is us. That's society. Isn't that beautiful? Anyway, suffering, the suffering and sacrifice of our ancestors has given us everything we have. The food we eat. Have you seen early crops? They're tiny and there's more effort than they're worth. They really are more effort than they're worth. So for 10,000 years, most agriculturalists lived worse than most hunter-gatherers. I don't want to hear a thing about you gave up on your dream after 2 years when our ancestors stuck with farming for 10,000 years before it paid off. 5,000 years into farming, dudes were like, this is a bad system for us serfs. Only the kings and the priests are benefiting. We need a revolution. We should go back to being hunter-gatherers. And he was right. He was right for 5,000 more years. Okay, civilization flourished after agriculture. Individuals, however, suffered. And this might be part of our subconscious desire to go back to Eden. Just know that Eden is gone. Eden is gone. Then you've got these apocalyptic groups who feel if Jesus comes back or fill in the blank, human suffering will end. Human suffering doesn't end until humans end. Don't hold your breath. Our warm houses, our books, our clothes, our medicine. This is all man's order over nature. Our order. This is not natural order. Also, don't confuse God's order with nature's order. It is impossible. It is impossible to know the will of God. We have had nature religions before, God the Father is different from all of that. The progress of Christianity annihilated all the nature religions. So we're not talking about God here. We're talking about nature. Now, some of us believe that nothing can happen outside of God's will. So let's just say, for the sake of it, for the sake of conversation, that whatever happens in this world is the will of God. The architect is a spectator in the fight between nature and man. So think about this. The guy who started MMA or boxing or whatever, he doesn't know the outcome of the matches. He's a spectator with really good seats, but he's still there for the show. So there you go. We don't even have to explain God one way or the other, where he stands on this. Now, this is why the Gnostics believe that the God of this world is, let's say, unkind. They believe in a God that is all good, but that's not the God of this world. They call the God of this world the demiurge, and we won't know in our lifetimes if they're right. Check out that video on the Cathars. Were the Cathars wrong that Rome was evil? Was Rome wrong to put an end to that chaotic fringe sect? That's a great case study on a particular battle between order and chaos, the Catholic Church and the Cathars. And remember, it's order versus chaos, not right versus wrong. People get confused and disillusioned all the time. Right can come from people doing wrong. Maybe the Catholic Church was right by doing wrong. Maybe. See, just don't think about it too hard. Anyway, so the Gnostics believe in a demiurge that was either evil or a trickster, and that was the God of this world. This was supposed to be the being that controls the material world, and they hated the material world. They thought it was evil. Now, the Cathars, they were talking about Rome because that's what they knew. Our world is much bigger than a medieval peasant's. It's just, we know more. And still, despite us knowing more, it does seem that the architect of our world has a mischievous streak. It's putting it nicely. And not just for us humans. Animals get it worse than us. Nature is very cruel. Why I bring this up? Why do I bring this up? Well, humans want order, but nature doesn't want to give us order. She wants us to fall in line with her order. So we don't want that. Her order is cruel and indifferent. So we say no. We say we're going to make our own order. And we call this order civilization. Now, civilization, it's confined to the laws of nature, but we can work within them to actually get a pretty good quality of life, to make life more comfortable, to make things right. Right. Good. That's how we got where we are. We want order, and that's it. Just remember that. But how do we make order? Institutions. So this is why institutions are so important. Yes, sometimes they are cruel, but they serve a very important function. Institutions. They help us impose man's order over chaos because each of us individually is too weak, too stupid, too short-lived to do it alone on a large scale. We can't do it. We need to work together, like those ants floating. Now, some institutions are better than others. The Inca priests who sacrificed thousands of people, thousands of innocent people, they were an institution. The Catholic Church that put a stop to them and also murdered thousands of Cathars for wrongthink. The Cathars' crime was wrongthink. They were also an institution. Now, in 2022, 800 years later, our institutions are supposed to be better because they're supposed to be based on reason. We are on the other side of the age of reason, supposedly. I believe reason was a major mental leap. We no longer attribute the causes of things to the supernatural. God's not sending lightning because he's mad at us. It's because of a storm. What happens to us because of the laws of nature through the laws of the material world. Now, people hate on the material world. They hate on the material world with a material tongue. Make it make sense. We are material. We kind of have to deal with the material world. I'm sorry, Cathars. We do. We get what we want through strategic efforts over time, not because God favors us or he's cursed us. Now, the caveat is that the conditions have to be right. Strategic effort over time, it may work here and not there. Same strategy, same effort, same amount of time, but it just doesn't work. So God willing means that we still need some luck. We need the cards to fall in our favor. Is this God's hand? Now, atheists will say no. The coin just happened to flip in our favor. But theists will say yes, because that coin didn't have to flip in our favor. Now, luckily for us in the American middle class, we don't have to look chaos in the face too often. Our institutions have managed to temper chaos for us. They've managed to negotiate with it. We can be comfortable and our needs will be met for the most part. Asterisks, whatever. There's food for us. We have heating. We have people that we can call to fight our battles. And we have people we can call to exact vengeance for us. Exact vengeance against those who have wronged us. Our lives are pretty good. And don't let anyone tell you differently. I know it's an unpopular opinion, but life is good right now. The collective consciousness is neurotic. It's always got to look for the worst in any situation. Can't just be happy. Social media will have you believing we live in the trenches of World War I. Really, it's the opposite. We live in a comfortable time, and it's on us to see that it stays that way. The institutions, what are those institutions that have helped us? Well, the food and agriculture industry is the reason why we have food on the shelves. They've kept the price of food relatively cheap. We have heating because of the energy industry, the home heating industry. That's why we have heating. The institution we call to fight our battles for us is the police. And the institution that exacts vengeance from our enemies is the courts. Together, this is the criminal justice system. Okay. Right there. So many of you had so much to say about food and agriculture, about big energy, about the criminal justice system. And you know what? You're probably right. They're corrupt. They lie all the time. Let's see what else. They're not fair. Yes, and yes. They're all of those things are true. Now you see the problem. Oh my God, our institutions are failing us. We can't trust them. Over Thanksgiving, my friend told me he doesn't believe that the Dark Ages happened. I addressed another Dark Ages didn't happen conspiracy with the Black Hebrew Israelites. Some on the extremes believe that. What my friend said is not that. It's a completely different Dark Ages didn't happen conspiracy. He's talking about young Earth Dark Ages didn't happen. You got to keep those straight. I'm only going to say it once. I'm not going to go over it twice. I'm not going to explain this to you. I'm kidding, of course, but we have two different conspiracy theories, different conspiracy rooms in the Black Iron Prison that believe the Dark Ages didn't happen. One, the Hebrew Israelites, they believe it because they believe the rulers of Europe were actually Black. This fits into their grand narrative that Black people were the original everything across the whole world. Their bubble, the lens from which they view everything is the American Black experience, and then only a limited part of the American Black experience. The other one, what my friend told me about, is young Earth. That's young Earth. Dark Ages didn't happen. And they didn't happen because the Earth is much younger than the scientists are telling us. Also, fossils aren't real. Why? The Bible says fossils aren't real, and there's no time for fossils in young Earth. Now, they didn't write much during the Dark Ages, so he's like, well, where's the history? The history is there. Especially if you leave the bubble of Western Europe, the history of the Dark Ages is there. But the Dark Ages being a myth fits into the young Earth grand narrative, that the Earth is young. Okay, so for the normies who fell asleep during history class, I'm going to explain the Dark Ages to you. The Dark Ages were called the Dark Ages because the fire of civilization went out in Western Europe after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The Roman Empire held on in the East. And then when it collapsed in the East, Western Europe got a lot of texts back, a lot of scripts back on science, on spirituality. They were translated from Greek to Latin and then into the vernacular. So the fire of knowledge burned again in Western Europe. But there was a few hundred years where just people were not learning much. That's a very brief explanation of the Dark Ages. So says I, an impartial YouTube scholar, or a paid shill of big Dark Ages. Which one is it? You decide. Why bother explaining away the Dark Ages to begin with? Well, it fits their respective grand narratives for it not to have happened. Why do they need a grand narrative? Well, grand narratives give certainty, or the illusion of certainty. They give the illusion of certainty. Certainty is not real. It's fake. Now, I have relative certainty that the Dark Ages happened because of the overwhelming evidence. There's evidence from around the world, not just from Western Europe. You kind of have to branch out and see who else was taking notes during the Dark Ages period. I believe in fossils because I've found fossils. We found rocks, we cracked them open, and inside was a leaf, a fossil of a leaf. Now, fossils happen when organic matter is replaced with rock over time. I will not defend fossils in 2022. Not even for a laugh. Fossils are real. To believe that fossils aren't real, one would have to believe that the Earth is a giant movie set. The Earth is a giant movie set, and a set designer made all these little rocks and put them here for us to find in some sort of interactive gaming experience. Now look, I don't not buy that our immortal souls are having an interactive gaming experience, okay? I am that open-minded. However, if we are, this set, the world, is made or was made by the natural processes which our scientists have been able to successfully understand. Fossils are real. Don't at me with that foolishness. Just don't. It's flat Earth too. Flat Earth. Oh my God. I am not entertaining flat Earth in 2022. We can launch satellites. We can launch satellites that orbit the Earth. We know the Earth is round. That's significant to like 10 people, 10 of my followers who ruined their day fighting flat earthers in the last comment section. There's this one lady was like, explain weather systems then. If the Earth is flat, what about weather systems? And the flat earther was like, nah, weather systems are fake. Weather systems are fake. Can you imagine this person's significant other later in the day when they just unload all of this onto them? They're like, and then they said weather systems are fake, but there's weather outside. How are weather systems fake? And the significant other, husband or wife, is just like, I know, babe. Like, I know about weather systems. I'm with you on weather systems. I don't understand. And they're just like, I can't believe this. It's always the significant other who suffers when people act foolishly online. Whenever you get into a fight online, you don't recap with that person. You don't know that person. It's your significant other. But that's funny because that means couples can get together and dunk on flat earthers. I think this builds relationships. That's kind of the schizophrenia I'm talking about. That's kind of the delusion I'm talking about. The Earth is round. That is not interesting anymore. That's not been interesting since Galileo in like the 1630s. Galileo was a heretic then. Definitely check out that video on heresy and wrongthink. Now it's 2022. I am more interested in the strain of madness that makes a person believe that the Earth is flat despite satellites, despite weather systems, that makes people think that fossils are fake. How did we get to this point? Flat Earth, Dark Ages are fake, fossils are fake. These are extreme conspiracy theories. And I suspect some of these started as trolls. Not all conspiracy theories are that extreme, though. It's a sliding scale. Some people have gotten caught up in these thought bubbles, and they don't even know that they're thought bubbles because so many people believe it too. What's the difference between a conspiracy theory and an idea whose time has come? It depends on the idea. We don't know. We don't know. Historians will tell us, but we'll be dead, so meh. You know a conspiracy theory few even question? The patriarchy. So the patriarchy is this idea that all of the systems of power, all of our institutions are actually controlled by men holding power over women. The patriarchy is the nemesis of feminism. You see how they view the patriarchy and how they view the hypothetical matriarchy. Why should we question the patriarchy? There's so much history to it. There were the witch trials. There were laws on the book up until the 70s. Our number one prayer, Our Father, Pater Nostra, patriarchy, pater. And it's not smoke and mirrors. That's actual history. And yet, I've lost friends to radicalized feminist thinking. Now, define radicalized. Hating on all men. One even sabotaged her marriage, which was really sad because it was a nice marriage. But yeah, they say the truth will set you free. But free from what? Free from your marriage? Well, that's not good. I actually have a guess of how we got here. I have a guess. Let's start with the Orthodox view. Orthodox, by the way, means establishment. Heterodox means independent or heretical. Heretical comes from the Greek to choose. Now, the reasoning behind burning heretics is that they chose an option outside of the Orthodox. Therefore, they chose wrong. Duh, gotta burn them. Now, the orthodox view of history that we read is in the 8th grade textbook, the McGraw-Hill or whatever popular company. The institution is McGraw-Hill. The institution which supports them and pays them, funds them, is called the U.S. Department of Education. So these are institutions. And we trust them, right? We trust the U.S. Department of Education. I mean, we kind of have to. We kind of have to trust academia because we can't go to the library and read all of the first-hand accounts of every battle, even the ones written in English. We can't read all these first-hand accounts. We kind of trust these academic institutions to hold certain standards so that we can depend and trust their conclusions. We're not personally in a lab testing vaccines on lab mice. We can't do that. We have to trust these scientists. Remember, trust the science? Trust the science? Science is an abstract concept. Do we trust the scientific method? Yes, absolutely. Did the scientist performing the science follow the scientific method? In good faith. Did they follow it in good faith? What about all these stories coming out of major fraud? This isn't conspiracy stuff. This is documented deception on behalf of scientists to further their own careers. And these deceptions laid the foundation for further research. A lot of research depended on fraud, particularly Alzheimer's. This is why when people dismiss conspiracy theorists outright, I get to thinking we must not be looking at the same game board. Because from what I see, a lot of conspiracy theorists are justified. So yes, there's danger. There's absolutely danger in conspiracy thinking. But to me, the bigger danger is that our institutions are failing to uphold their end of the bargain. We have to be able to trust them, and they're just not being trustworthy. So now the public questions institutions. Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is just an example. We saw a lot of it under COVID. People don't trust the medical system anymore. Okay, the vaccine rollout was stupid and wrong, and there's no way to justify vaccine mandates. If they didn't test to see if the vaccine could prevent spread, then how do you justify the mandates? It doesn't make any sense. Stop gaslighting anti-vaxxers. If Peter McCullough can be written off, then none of the hundreds of papers that he's published mean anything. But nobody is arguing that because that's nonsense. Anti-vaxxers, please go to the doctor if you get injured, if you find a growth, if you have an abnormal illness. I am with you. I am on the same page as you with the working out and the sun and the seed oils, but sunlight is not going to help a burst appendix. Some vaccines are good and they help us, like the tetanus shot. Now we're seeing people who correctly question the mRNA vaccine, doubting all vaccines. And that's why you don't call everyone an anti-vaxxer. And then, because the public knew that the establishment was lying about COVID, they believed far-fetched conspiracy claims they would have rejected just a year earlier. Global depopulation, the mark of the beast, microchips. All of these conspiracy theories became more believable to the vaccine hesitants once the Main Street narrative became unbelievable. A little truth plus bold assumptions plus confident assertions equals a stellar conspiracy theory. This is kind of a repeat of the conspiracy holes that many went down around 9/11 and JFK. Those were crazy. 9/11, JFK, and now COVID. Ugh. I'm not saying anything. We are not going to talk about COVID. We are done talking about COVID and we are moving on. I was on a plane one time over this whole COVID thing. During the vaccine rollout and so forth. It was a really contentious time. And this guy behind me, he was talking to his neighbor and he said, I don't understand why unvaccinated people go to the doctor for anything at all. If they don't trust the doctor for this vaccine, why would they trust them for anything else? That's what he said. And I was really confused by that for so long, but then I figured it out. He had full trust in the medical system. Full trust in the medical establishment. Full trust in the pharmaceutical industry. 100%. Like people trust their priests. Like people trust their church. That's how much he trusted the healthcare system. And that's not rational either. After the opioid epidemic, after Dope Sick, check out that miniseries. Why would anybody trust these people? But he did. That is kind of the polar opposite of people who don't trust the medical system at all, who won't give their kids any vaccine. Actually, is it the opposite? Or are people who take things on an issue-by-issue basis and use reason the opposite? Are people who are generally not dogmatic, is that the opposite of somebody who trusts outright? If we were to visualize this, does the chart look like this, or does the chart look like this? Is it a circle or is it a line? You let me know in the comments. Other institutions that appear to be trustworthy and are continuously letting us down, they're everywhere. The government with campaign finance and the party system, we can't trust them. But we need the government. We can't trust them. So we're kind of in a rough place. Various churches and religions let us down. And that's not even new. We're just more aware of it now. And we see the news. But molesting kids is not the worst thing the Catholic Church has looked the other way on. Leave it at that. The prosperity gospel, that's a reboot. Cults, they're all formulaic. People are abandoning organized religion in droves. They still need religion, though. Maybe they'll find it in a meme. A lot of people have never read a religious book in their entire lives. They just have a meme stash that they call Spirit. Like there's a folder called Spirit and that has all their spiritual memes in it. And that's their religious book. But no judgment. Like what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to pay 10% to a place that may or may not molest their daughter. I mean, that meme stash could be saving them a lot of real world heartache. My point is that church attendance is declining and people are losing faith in the institutions. They're not losing faith in God. They're just spiritual now, which is all fine and good until spirit gets usurped by ego and weak-minded people start using spiritual vocabulary to justify their base needs. Now, this is a trend you might recognize from every cult leader ever. My friend who said the Dark Ages didn't happen, he lost faith in academia. That's why he rejects all of accepted history. And I get it. I get distrusting academia. I grew up in academia. My mother, whatever, it doesn't matter. I grew up there when it was still relatively sane. Now, practically speaking, a lot of things have changed and are changing. The school administrators outnumber the teachers. That means more opportunities for egos to get in the way of learning, more pockets that need to be lined, so tuition goes up. Plus, too many people are going to college now. College used to mean something. It used to mean that you were educated, and now it's basically a high school diploma. So there are a lot of structural reasons why academia is declining. And also, the infestation of the liberal arts with critical theories has kind of been a disaster. Cultural criticism is basically heresy for the modern world. It says that everything society is based off is flawed, that we can pick apart the real world like it's a novel, but unlike a novel, we shouldn't appreciate it as is, but we should try to make it right. Well, what is right? We just talked about, well, there's no right and wrong. There just is, beneficial to us or not beneficial to us. Right and wrong, what is that? What is this infantile concept of right and wrong? Taking that out. Okay. Critical theories, cultural criticism. It's like smallpox. It belongs in the lab with professionals, whether these professionals be lawyers or they be social workers rescuing women. What we are learning in real time is that ideas are dangerous when they're dumbed down and weaponized. They might not even be bad ideas, but when they're distributed and dumbed down in memes, they're dangerous. These slogans. Noted. Do you think we just learned that in this time after social media? Or do you think that people learned that many times over and over again in the past? That these slogans are very dangerous. They definitely learned it in World War II. Do you think they learned it after the printing press and the chaos of the Protestant Reformation? I actually saw this tweet and I thought it was so interesting. Like, you're still mad about the Protestant Reformation like 500 years later? This is from a man I follow called Pascal Emmanuel Gobry. He writes, in 2022, he writes, "The Reformation was the original woke movement, iconoclastic, contemptuous of order, hierarchies, and traditions, based on simple, absurd phrases, and in the end, a small clique of psychopaths made off with all the money and power." And I wonder if monks at the time were like, these aren't bad ideas. These are actually good ideas. They're just not good ideas for everyone. I don't even know the number of people who died thinking that the Protestant Reformation was a complete failure. We don't think that. We don't think that because we benefited from it. But hey, apparently it's still Open for debate. Note the belief in the Protestant ethic, which states that Protestants work harder than lazy, shiftless Catholics. And that's why we went to space, while Catholics are busy at Mardi Gras with their little cakes. I'm paraphrasing for time. We don't have the time for it, but I'm paraphrasing. Now, my point to all that is academia is a mess right now, and people don't trust them. And you take this scenario to its logical conclusion, and you get people who don't believe in fossils. They believe that geologists and paleontologists are engaged in some sort of massive conspiracy. Another great conspiracy our friend told us. I actually saw it independently in my Twitter feed too, so I knew what he was talking about. He said that they're putting fetal cells from abortions into junk food. Have you heard about this one? Because it's crazy. It's the first I heard of it, but then I went and researched it. And we were like, there's no way, because that's too expensive and junk food is cheap. Like, we weren't thinking that, no, the fast food industry, they wouldn't do this for moral reasons. We're just like, well, the price point isn't there. It just doesn't make any sense financially. It turns out, apparently, that a bunch of scientists developed a technique to make artificial taste receptors using these fetal lines. And they're using it to test the tastiness of food. Well, isn't that great? I have been cooking nearly my whole life, and I've never found a reason to employ artificial taste receptors from fetal lines. It just doesn't come up. Okay, first off, do we not have enough junk food? We got enough. We can get a moratorium on new junk food. Second, was a human mouth not good enough to taste said junk food? Can you just not use your mouth? Anyway, now all these people in the comment section of the CP podcast, they clown me. They clown me for making everything from scratch. But this is creepy. It's creepy and it's weird, and I don't want anything to do with a company that would even entertain this idea. However, they're not technically putting baby parts in the junk food. But how do you explain that subtlety to our friend? How am I supposed to explain this to them? Is there a point? You're kind of splitting hairs at this point, right? It's so creepy. It's so creepy. Why would I bother trying to explain to him that transhumanist Satanists aren't running the world? That they're not trying to put poisons in his body. He has a lot of evidence that says they are trying to put poisons in his body. Now, the very subtle point here is that transhuman Satanists don't exist. What seems like transhuman Satanists is reality, a reality in which people adopt new technology that furthers the individual's power, even the individual's power over nature. This power of the individual, our ancestors personified as Satan. Now, does that mean that transhuman Satanists run the world, de facto? No, it means we have free will, and this is what free will gives us. Certainly, there is a failsafe to save us from ourselves, right? Right? Yes. The failsafe is the institutions. Oops. So there you go. As soon as we stop trusting the institutions, everything they've ever told us comes into question. Every bit of knowledge that anyone supposedly knows is up for debate. Some people, they honestly say things like, "What, did you read that in a book?" Or, "I bet you read that online, huh?" Like, yeah, I read it in a book. Do you think the town criers screamed it at me in the Whole Foods parking lot? No, I read it in a book. But they don't trust books anymore. And that's where we are right now. So we lack a shared reality. Remember that meme? This is a 6 and this is a 9. Well, you're both right, huh? No, girl. You better figure out if that's a 6 or a 9, or else this patient's gonna OD. The collective consciousness is a mess. I get why people fall into conspiracy theories. I get why they go down these conspiracy rabbit holes. I am also disappointed in our institutions. Just these conspiracy theories, they give this alternative narrative. And people, they like the certainty of it. They like the certainty of a grand narrative, even one that has lots of holes. They just overlook the holes. My brother described people who go from cult to cult, or for people who go from cult to conspiracy hole, or go from one conspiracy hole to another. He called them addicts. He said they are addicted to the illusion of certainty. My brother, very smart guy. They're like addicts. I feel we're living at a time of great tectonic disturbances in society. And I get why people check out. Like the people who check out, that's their Roadrunner don't look down strategy. They're just not going to pay attention to it. For me personally, reading and asking questions, it's kind of my way of measuring the world to get some idea of how it really works. Like ignoring the chaos that's around everywhere, it's not going to ease my anxiety. It's only going to increase it. It doesn't mean you let these studies of chaos take over our lives. I'm not going to let it take over my life, because you can study chaos in moderation. Just like we exercise, we eat in moderation, fashions in moderation. We just do it a little at a time. This is your portion of chaos. If you want more than this, you have to go to 4chan. It helps to be able to come in and out of it, to go into dark places and then go back out into happy places. And to just understand that the ups and the downs, these are all part of just being alive. Okay. So I said earlier that I had a solution. I do, kind of. The solution, warning, the solution itself is a little chaotic. And even if it works for the system, it might not work for us as individuals. And we might not know if it even works for this system until long after we're dead. Just like the agricultural revolution. We're just not going to know. It's uncertainty right there. Just uncertainty, capital U. I just think that's so funny. Like a revolutionary peasant is screaming about late stage agriculture. And he was right. He was right. Late stage agriculture is a failure. And he was right for thousands of years, longer than recorded history. He was right until he was wrong. And he might even still be right. We'll see. We'll see how this civilization thing goes. Anywho, my point is this reading from Beyond Chaos, not Chaos by James Gleick. Chaos by James Gleick is kind of required reading in its entirety. This is an excerpt from Beyond Chaos. It's this book, Beyond Chaos, the underlying theory behind life, the universe, and everything by Mark Ward. Chaos is actually a field of study, so it's not just chaos. It's actually a field of study. You can major in it. It's hard, but you can major in it. Okay, let's go. Let's go to this. In the Christmas week of 1965, Kadanoff had a sudden vision that showed him exactly how this could happen. A large bar magnet is made up of millions of microscopic magnets. Okay? At room temperature, almost all the north poles of the mini magnets are pointing one way and nearly all the south poles the other way. This is what makes the entire bar magnetic, too. When the ferromagnet is heated, the energy being added upsets this neat arrangement. Some of the tiny domains flip, and the confusion of magnetic fields means that gradually the bar loses ability to pick up pins, tacks, and other objects. Mean field theory can start to explain what is happening because initially there is a linear relationship between the gradual loss of magnetism and the increasing heat. However, as more energy is added, this relationship starts to break down. As the bar is heated more and more, it should be a comma right there. As the bar is heated, more and more of the mini magnets begin to vacillate between different orientations, flipping now one way and then another. The magnetic pull of their neighboring grains might influence them too. They might be flipped around or they might stay as they are. As the heat of the magnet rises, this indecision becomes more pronounced. In a magnet held at the critical point, energy is... There's no commas in this. What is he doing? Comma there. In a magnet held at the critical point, energy is being added all the time. So it becomes easier and easier for those miniature magnets to change their mind about which way they are pointing. The heat being added may kick them over their heels. There is always enough energy available to change orientation, so they have no reason to stay fixed and anything can happen. Orientation and organization can appear and disappear in an instant. Okay, look, we don't really know if the heat's gonna pass or if this is beyond our control. I honestly see a future where we've made it through these chaotic years. The stresses from society, that's the heat being added to the magnet. And we are all little mini magnets, and we all need to hold on to our true north. And we can affect the little mini magnets around us. Those are our people. Our friends, our family. We can affect them. And we just have to hope, fingers crossed, that enough of us are holding on to true north to keep the magnet working, at least until the heat passes. Now, if this video was upsetting to you, because it should have been, if you're actually listening, it should have been very upsetting to you, and you feel worse now than you did at the beginning, step away from the ledge. Come back from the ledge. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You're a mini magnet, and your friends and family are mini magnets too. You might be like, well, this mini magnet at Thanksgiving dinner told me the Dark Ages didn't happen. Forget about that mini magnet. Look at your other side. How's this mini magnet doing? Is he good? Or she? Then good. Good. Subscribe.